For 5 years, I held on to a promise that he'd marry me because we had a child together. I thought it was just a matter of time, but I slowly started to realize it wasn't a promise, it was a transaction. This is the story of how I stopped waiting for him to see my value and decided to value myself instead. It's the story of how I stopped accepting a conditional love and started building a life that was unconditionally mine. This wasn't a simple breakup. It was a 5-year process of untangling my worth from his approval. And it all ended with the single, liberating tap of a button: block. It started, like so many stories do, with a mix of terror and joy. Seeing those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test felt like my whole world had tilted on its axis. I was young. I was in love, or at least what I thought was love, and I was about to be a mother. But when I told him, his reaction wasn't what I'd dreamed of. There was no shared joy, no hug that said we're in this together. Instead, there was this long, calculated pause. It felt more like a business negotiation than a life-changing moment. And then he said the words that would define the next 5 years of my life. Okay. I'll marry you. For the baby. Even then, a small part of me knew something was wrong. It just felt so hollow. The phrase "for the baby" echoed in my head. It wasn't because I love you, or because I can't imagine my life without you. It was a condition. But I pushed that feeling way down. I was pregnant, hormonal, and so desperate for the fairy tale. I wanted the family, the stability, the last name that would match my child's. I told myself that love would grow, that the marriage was just the structure we needed, and we'd fill in the rest later. I convinced myself his practical attitude was a sign of maturity, not a giant red flag. I wanted to believe it so badly that I made it my truth. The first year was a blur of diapers, sleepless nights, and the constant, quiet hum of hope. Our daughter was born, and she was perfect. I loved her with a ferocity I never knew I had. And he was there, at least physically. He held her, he provided for us, but emotionally, he was a ghost. The topic of marriage became this delicate thing, only brought up on special occasions and then quickly put away. On our daughter's first birthday, he toasted to our future in front of our families, and my heart just soared. This is it, I thought. He sees it now. He sees us. But the weeks turned into months, and our future was still just this vague place we never seemed to get any closer to. Every time I'd gently bring it up, he'd deflect with practiced ease. We need to save more money. Let's wait until she's a little older. Work is just so crazy right now. The excuses were always plausible, always just reasonable enough to make me feel bad for even asking. He was a master at making me feel demanding, when all I was doing was asking him to follow through on his own promise. Looking back, I see it for what it was. I didn't know the term then, but experts call it a form of reproductive coercion, using the pregnancy to control the relationship, which, unsurprisingly, can lead to depression and anxiety. Years 2 and 3 were harder. The hope started to curdle into resentment. I was a mother, a partner, a homemaker, everything but a wife. I felt like I was in a permanent audition for a role I had already been promised. I hosted holiday dinners, organized his family's parties, and played the part of the devoted partner in every way, hoping my performance would finally be good enough. My life was on hold, waiting for him to finally decide it was time to press play. He'd dangle the promise like a carrot. We'd have a good week, and he'd say something like, "You know, I was looking at rings online the other day." And just like that, I was reeled back in. The hope, which had been flickering, would roar back to life, burning away all the doubt. I'd float for a month on that one comment, ignoring that nothing ever actually changed. It was a classic manipulation tactic. Those sudden shifts from distant to affectionate that are designed to keep you hooked and stop you from leaving. When friends asked, "So when are you two getting married?" I'd just parrot his excuses with a fake smile, my stomach in knots. "Oh, you know, we're just focused on the baby." The lie felt like acid. I was protecting his image while my own sense of self was slowly eroding. I had tied my entire worth to his decision. If he married me, I was valuable. If he didn't, I was disposable. By year 4, the hope had mostly turned into a heavy resignation. Our daughter was starting to notice things. "Mommy, why don't you have the same last name as me and Daddy?" Her innocent question felt like a knife in my chest. I had been so focused on the idea that a child needs their father, I didn't see that what my child really needed was a mother who wasn't being slowly crushed. My well-being was tied to hers, and I was not well. I was walking on eggshells, terrified to say or do anything that might push that imaginary future even further away. This wasn't a partnership, it was a performance, and I was exhausted from trying to be perfect enough to finally earn the commitment I deserved. The turning point wasn't a big, dramatic fight. There were no thrown plates or tearful confessions. It happened on a gray, rainy Tuesday afternoon. Our daughter, now 5, was at a friend's house, and the apartment was deafeningly quiet. I was tidying up, picking up toys, when I saw a brochure for a wedding venue, tucked under a pile of mail. My heart did that familiar, hopeful leap. He picked it up. He's finally thinking about it. My hands were literally trembling as I pulled it out. It was a beautiful place, a rustic barn with string lights. I could see it all. Our daughter as a flower girl. Our families celebrating. Me in a white dress. My fingers flew as I texted him. I saw the brochure for the wedding venue. It's beautiful. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? I stared at my phone, waiting for those 3 little dots to appear. I waited. And waited. An hour passed. Then 2. The hopeful energy in the room slowly bled out, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. Finally, my phone buzzed. His reply was short, blunt, and it shattered everything. "That's for my cousin's wedding. I'm a groomsman." I read the text 3 times. Every word was a gut punch. It wasn't just that the brochure wasn't for us. It was the casual cruelty of it. He was planning to be in his cousin's wedding, a celebration of love and commitment, and he hadn't even thought to mention it. I wasn't even on his radar. The thought of how I might feel finding that brochure hadn't even crossed his mind. In that moment, something inside me just snapped. It was the final straw after 5 years of broken promises, of feeling like I wasn't enough, of making myself small to make him comfortable. I finally saw it clearly. I wasn't a partner to him. I was an accessory. I was the mother of his child, a convenient setup that gave him the look of a family man without any of the actual commitment. The promise of marriage was never about a future. It was a tool to keep me there, to keep me quiet, to keep me from leaving. I sank onto the sofa, the brochure still in my hand. The beautiful barn on the cover now looked like it was mocking me. All those years I'd spent trying to read his mind, and the truth had been right in front of me the whole time. His actions spoke for themselves. He didn't want to marry me. He just didn't want the inconvenience of me leaving. The relationship was a transaction. My side of the deal, a child, a home. Unwavering support was paid in full. His side, the marriage, was perpetually out of stock. This was my wising up moment that experts on manipulative relationships talk about. The seed of doubt planted 5 years ago had finally grown into a tree of certainty. There was no going back. I thought about my daughter. What was I teaching her by staying here? That it's okay for a woman to wait for a man to decide she's worthy? That it's okay to accept crumbs of affection and call it a meal? That waiting is noble, when really, it's an act of self-abandonment? I looked around the apartment I'd worked so hard to make a home, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. This wasn't my home. It was a stage, and I was done with my role. For the first time in 5 years, the thought of leaving wasn't terrifying. It was liberating. Once the decision was made, this profound sense of calm settled over me. The anxiety that had been my constant companion for 5 years just receded. It was replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt this clarity I hadn't felt in years. I knew exactly what I had to do. That night, I went through the motions. I picked up my daughter, who was bubbling with stories about her day. I gave her a bath, read her a story, and tucked her into bed. Watching her sleep, my resolve hardened. This was for her, too. She deserved a whole mom, not a fractured version of one who was always waiting for someone else's approval. He came home late, like he often did, gave me a quick peck on the cheek, and turned on the TV, completely oblivious to the earthquake that had just happened inside of me. I watched him for a second and realized he was just a man. Not a gatekeeper to my happiness, not the judge of my worth, just a person who made a selfish promise and had been coasting on it ever since. I didn't confront him. What was the point? It would have just led to more promises, more manipulation, more of the same draining cycle. He would have apologized, promised me the world, and pulled me right back into the waiting game. I was done playing. An argument gives them an opening. I was choosing to simply exit. This wasn't a discussion, it was a verdict. The next morning after he left for work, I started packing. I packed my daughter's things, then my own. Only the essentials. As I moved through the apartment, it felt like shedding a skin. With every item I put in a box, I was reclaiming a piece of myself. The final act was the most symbolic. I sat on the floor of the half-empty living room, phone in hand. My thumb hovered over his contact. The photo was of him and our daughter at the park, both smiling. For a second, I hesitated. Am I being too drastic? Am I destroying her family? Then I thought about the brochure, the 5 years, his cousin's wedding, the emptiness in his eyes. This wasn't a family. It was an arrangement. And it was costing me my soul. I thought about what a real boundary is. It's not a request. It's a hard line that says, this is where your influence ends and my well-being begins. Blocking him wasn't some petty childish act. It was me finally asserting a boundary I had failed to set for 5 years. It was taking back control. I took a deep breath and tapped block this caller. Then I went to his social media and did the same. Block, block, block. With each tap, a weight lifted. It was a quiet, digital severing of a tie that had been strangling me. It was my declaration that I was no longer available for his games. The communication channel was closed. No dramatic final text. No angry voicemail. Just silence. A firm, clean break. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt done. The first few days were surreal. I moved with my daughter into a small apartment that was all ours. The first thing I noticed was the silence, not just the empty quiet, but the absence of the constant buzzing anxiety in my own head, the waiting for a text, the replaying of a conversation. It was gone. In its place was a quiet that was both unnerving and deeply peaceful. Of course, there was fear. The practical fears of being a single mom on a tight budget were very real. But the bigger fear was, who was I without him? For 5 years, my identity had been the one who was waiting. My moods were dictated by his. Now, it was just me. I had to get to know myself again, and it felt like meeting a stranger. I started small. I started journaling, not to analyze him, but to figure myself out. I started doing this thing I call internal parenting. When I'd feel lonely or full of self-doubt, I'd talk to myself like a loving parent. Instead of beating myself up for wasting 5 years, I'd say, you did the best you could with what you knew then. You were brave enough to leave. It was about replacing his missing validation with my own unconditional self-acceptance. It was about changing the story in my head from I was left behind to I learned to respect myself enough to walk away. The most surprising part was the incredible surge of energy I felt. All the mental space I had dedicated to that one-sided relationship was suddenly free. I poured that energy into my daughter, our new home, my work. I reconnected with friends I drifted from. I was actually building a life, not just waiting for one to start. There were hard days, for sure. Days where the loneliness was sharp and the new reality felt overwhelming. But even on the worst days, there was an undercurrent of peace. The peace that comes from no longer betraying yourself, from living a life that is honest. I wasn't performing anymore. I was just living, and my daughter thrived. Free from the tension in our old home, she blossomed. Our little apartment, though much smaller, was filled with a lightness that had been missing for years. Seeing her so happy was all the confirmation I needed. My mental health was her foundation, and by choosing to heal myself, I was giving her the gift of a happy, present mom. The urge to check my phone faded. The space he took up in my head got smaller and smaller. I was no longer a supporting character. I was the protagonist of my own story. Looking back, I see that blocking him wasn't the end. It was the real beginning. It was the moment I stopped asking, "Why doesn't he see my worth?" and started declaring, "I see my own worth." That single tap of a button was the final exam in a 5-year course on self-respect. The biggest lesson is this: you can't find your value in someone else's validation. Self-worth, self-respect, self-love, there's a reason they all start with self. They're an inside job. Waiting for someone else to give them to you is a losing game. You're just handing them the keys to your own happiness, and then wondering why you feel so locked out. I also learned that hope, as beautiful as it is, can be a cage. My hope that he would change kept me trapped in a situation that was slowly destroying my spirit. I was addicted to the potential of who he could be, instead of accepting the reality of who he was. Freedom came when I let go of the fantasy and just accepted the facts in front of me. If you're watching this, and you're in a similar situation waiting for a text, a commitment, a sign that you're finally enough, I need you to hear this. You are already enough. Your worth is not negotiable. It isn't conditional. It is absolute. Choosing to leave, especially with a child involved, is one of the hardest things you can do. The guilt can feel suffocating. But the alternative, staying and teaching your child that love is supposed to feel like constant anxiety, is so much worse. You're not just modeling relationships for your kids, you're modeling self-respect. And a mother who respects herself gives her child permission to do the same. It's about building a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good from the outside. My story is just one story, but I know I'm not alone. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose yourself, where you had to walk away to reclaim your worth, I'd be so honored if you shared a piece of your story in the comments. What was your turning point? What did you learn? Your story might just be the sign that someone else needs to see today. Let's remind each other that we're not alone on this journey. So, that's the story of how I stopped waiting. Those 5 years weren't a waste. They were hard, and they were painful, but they were necessary. They forged the person I am today. A woman who knows her value. A mother who is present and whole. And a person who is finally, completely, and unapologetically free. Thank you for listening.